everyone, and welcome to today's Your Author program. My name is Patty Valdovinos, librarian in the Multilingual Collections Department, and I am here today with my colleague, Celia Avila de Santiago, senior librarian at the Junipero Serra branch of the Los Angeles Public Library.
It is our pleasure to host the Your Author series today. Please feel free to use the chat box to communicate your thoughts, comments, and questions throughout the whole program. Also, don't forget to email ecdept@lapl.org. It's appearing on the screen right now, and it should be in the chat box. So don't forget to email, and you'll be entered into an opportunity drawing to win a copy of today's book, Efrén Divided, by Ernesto Cisneros.
In today's Your Author program, writer and educator Ernesto Cisneros will be discussing his book, Efrén Divided. Authors such as Steve Bjorkman, Lilliam Rivera, and Sandra Cisneros has praised Ernesto's work. He is the 2021 Pura Belpre Award winner, a Crystal Kite Award winner, and a Golden Poppy Award winner. Ernesto is a 20-year teaching veteran in the city of Santana, where he teaches reading and writing at an intermediate school.
We want to thank our generous donors, the Lenore S and Bernard A. Greenberg Fund, and the Library Foundation for helping the library bring these author and illustrator programs to all of you. So thank you very much to our donors. The programs have been amazing, and we've enjoyed them. And now, for what we've all been waiting for, welcome Ernesto.
Yay! I just wanted to hear like cheers. Boop, boop, boop. We need sounds.
We'll have a drum roll next time.
Hello.
Well, thank you guys.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, we are excited to have you here and honored that you have made time to come talk to us and the patrons of the Los Angeles Public Library. So we are here today to get to know more about you and your creative process and your work behind Efrén Divided. So before we get started with some questions that me and Celia have prepared and are excited to ask you about, can you read us your favorite passage of Efrén Divided?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So this is one of the sections that it just brings back a lot of memories. So this is the one I wanted to share with you guys, if you guys don't mind. And let me just get somehow I move the page around.
It always happens. It always happens right before you start.
Right. And here we go. There was no way to win. Efrén yawned himself fully awake before turning towards his parents' side of the room. Once again, Abba was gone. No sign of his heavy jacket or scuffed-up work boots from the front door either. It seemed no matter how early Efrén tried getting up, he just couldn't catch Abba getting ready for work. Amma was the same way and never slept in. Any minute now, she'd wake up, unwrap her blankets, and go right to the kitchen to make breakfast. And there was a pot full of leftover frijoles from last night's dinner. And that meant she would for sure be making fresh sopes this morning, Efrén's favorite. But before that, Efrén had something important to do. He lifted Max's leg by the pajamas and got up, careful not to disturb Mia, who now snuggled close to Max. Efrén stepped over the pair of pint-sized legs and arms blocking his path. He wasn't sure which was worse, sharing a mattress with two kindergartners or sharing the bathroom. Their apartment was really one big room, so the only place he could find peace and quiet was the bathroom. Efrén looked in the mirror, wincing as he removed the tiny strips of tape pinning his ears back against the side of his head. An idea he came up with after repeatedly hearing Amma warn the little ones against making funny faces. Sus caras se les van a quedar así, she'd say. Their faces freezing. That's exactly what Efrén counted on. It was only a theory, but if it were even slightly true, he guessed the same would happen to his ears. If he could manage to tape back his ears often enough, they too would eventually freeze and finally stop sticking out. All he had to do was make sure they were folded in just the right way for a few more weeks, and presto, normal ears that didn't stick out like the knobs on Frankenstein's neck. And that is actually something that is a true story. And I used to actually put tape on here because I didn't want my ears to stick out as much, because I always thought they stuck out.
Oh my God. You know, you're not the first person I've heard done that as a kid.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh. I I read that part when I was sitting at the reference desk, and I was trying so hard not to like laugh out loud. And I just looked crazy, just sitting there like,
because you could just imagine a little kid, right? And then the whole saying, "Tu cara se te va a quedar así," is something that I still say till this day when someone gives me a fuchi face. I'm like, no.
Oh, I can picture my mom saying it to me as I was making faces as a kid. So like, and that was one of the things in the book. You know, there were so many little family moments, and even some of the food, like the frijolitos. Oh my gosh! Every time you mentioned food in the book, I was just like, oh, I'm so hungry. I just want to see my mom.
I know the mom cooking.
Yes,
it was great. Yeah. All right, we ready for some questions, Ernesto?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, all right. So that passage was beautiful, so thank you. We were wondering what sparked the idea for Efrén Divided and what the publishing process and writing process was for you to get it out to us.
So after 14 years, I had been sending my work in, and my agent, the amazing Deborah Warren from East West Literary, shout out. We had pretty much submitted to just about everybody. We kind of ran out of people to reject me. So we kind of took a time out, and we figured, let's take a breather and find out what's going on. And the suggestion was, why don't you go work on something? And that was the idea. But when I got back to my classroom, I had pretty much just given up, and I thought, okay, it's over. This was, my agent's just a little bit too nice, and she doesn't want to break my heart. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to write another story. And I was thinking about what you write. And I began with this boy, and I used to be a paper boy back when I was about 12. And I remember the cars racing, and they did kind of do this on purpose. When there's like a big charco of water, and then they would time it, and they would just to splash the kid. And I remember people doing that to me. And so I remember writing that little short story, and I think, okay, you know what I want to do? I want to write about Latino family. And then the elections came. And there was such horrible things being said about Latinos, and so I'm like, okay, my story is going to be a positive reflection of the Latinos. But what's the story here? And then during that year, I had 3 students that informed me that their parents had been taken away by ICE in the middle of the year. There was one boy in particular that stayed after school, and he talked to me about it. He's like, this last weekend, se habló me about mi papá. And I was devastated because I didn't know as a teacher, you kind of think you know all the answers and you want to help children. What do you say to a child like that? So Efrén Divided was my attempt to kind of create a friend to help guide them. And I wanted to give them a little bit of advice on how do you give, what was it I could say to children out there who are struggling like Efrén? And so that's how the book kind of came about. And then I shared it with my students who are my editors. Thank you, students out there, all of you who helped me. And they were the ones who told me, this is fantastic. You gotta publish it. And so I called my agent and I said, I'm sorry. You told me to work on something that we could sell. And here's me writing about a Latino family. And with everything going on in the world, nobody's going to want this book. I'm so sorry. I know, you told me to write something we could sell, and I ended up writing this. And 2 weeks later, we had an offer from HarperCollins. So it's like one of the biggest publishers in the world, which is just, I still can't believe it. I always wake up in the mornings and I look around like, no, there's my book.
You're all pinching yourself.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, I didn't catch the Efrén and then a friend until you mentioned it. I was like, oh, that is so cool. I think Celia noticed it too.
Yeah, our faces, as soon as you said that, both of us were just like, oh my God. Yes.
And I think it was really beautiful of how you said it was a friend for your students, because it did write to me. I read it as a letter to those students, right? And I think that was a beautiful way of just sharing your guidance, right, in a very humble and cool way for your students. So.
Yeah, and in the way, the family story there, they are going through a lot, but everything, the relationships are there. And that is still such a beautiful story that you told, like his relationships with his mother and his father, and then with his little sister and brother, and how he's watching over them. Like, all of it is so beautiful. And even, with his friend in the book too, like I want to cry just talking about it, because I think, you said you set out to tell a positive story about a Latino family. And in some ways, there's a lot of that positivity in here. You really see that connection that they have and that love ultimately.
Yes, I wanted to showcase Efrén as being truly rich.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In his way, family. Yes.
And you see it in his family and his friends and how well loved he is, and just his spirit within everything he's going through. He's rich, in that sense. So it was really cool to see that for Efrén. And so I think a lot of time me and Celia like to focus on the art cover of the book. And this one is really interesting because it has like the top and the bottom part, right? So there are two different pictures. I can flip it over for the. But so we want to know how involved you were for the cover art process, and because it's beautiful and it tells a story.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jay Bend is a genius, and I was very fortunate to work with her because especially a debut author, I'm not sure how much influence other authors are, able to, how much of their opinions are able to, I'm stuttering here. That long day work. I was able to give her a couple photographs. So she asked me, what kind of images does Efrén bring to mind? And I gave her some pictures, and I sent her a photograph of my son too. And so my son happens to look a lot like Efrén on there. And yes. And so that's a huge just honor to have that. And Jay was amazing because she read the book, and then we emailed each other, and she kind of asked me things, and I asked her about including little things, like for example on the cover there's a little apartment that's actually Pio Pico Elementary in Santa Ana.
This little one.
Yes, and right there, the right-hand side, right. Oh, the little thing's covering it, the sticker.
But I know the award winner. I can't take it off my nose. Oh, she has it.
Oh yeah.
I might have it a little bit.
So there is actually an apartment complex across the street from the school, and it has the little for rent sign. And so we wanted to go ahead and include that. And then we also had the sneakers on the power lines there too.
Mm-hmm.
And so and she didn't take all my ideas because some of my ideas were bad, but she did. She was she's incredible about that. She only takes like the good ideas I give. But honestly, it was all her. She's the one responsible for that amazing cover. She's a genius. She's amazing.
That is cool, and that they were able to include your son into the cover, I think is a huge honor, right? Is there did you provide a picture for the woman in the Efrén's mom?
I did provide photographs of what I thought that she looked like. Yes.
Okay. So there's no reference to her.
There's not a particular person, but it's almost like she took a little bit of this person and that person. You get an idea of the kind of what the mom looked like. But I think she did an amazing job.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know what some of the things you suggested that didn't make it to the cover.
There, Celia goes. Celia had to ask.
I had to. I'm sorry.
No. It's like for example, I had some students. We did this project called Symposium, where students do a presentation of any topic that they like, and I had some students that were actually doing separation of families, and as their art piece, they actually created this piece, and it had just bars with the silhouette of children there, and I remember just seeing it, and I was just blown away by it, and so that was one of the early images that I submitted. I was like, okay, I think this is what I would like to have. And there's lots of images out there that I kind of played with, but again, I wasn't the expert, and I'm so glad that Jay was, and she's just amazing. I just love her work.
No, it looks great, and I hadn't noticed the little sneakers on the power line, so it's and the Serenta sign, so it's a beautiful cover.
Yes, and what I keep doing this in everywhere I go. I love the mirror reflection, because sometimes as teachers we see kids and we think they don't turn on their cameras, they're not doing their homework, and we don't realize that sometimes there's something bigger going on at home. And it's our responsibility as educators to take the time to find out what's going on and really help out the kids.
Yeah, and I like that Efrén's teachers kind of realize that themselves. At first his teachers kind of asking him, or going through the motions of, why are you late? Why didn't you do such and such? And then he kind of slows down and takes him in and realizes that I think along the lines of the line, it's something around we forget that kids are they're also going through some of their own big like problems that we don't see. So I thought that was really beautiful, and it's really well portrayed in that cover with the dual imaging. So along the lines of how you just mentioned that, are there, do you hide any secrets in your books that only a few people will find?
Yes, there's tons of them for Santaneros. Anybody who, I mean, you can literally walk around Highland Street and just kind of hold the book out, and you can probably figure out which homes I was talking about at different moments. There's different food trucks in Santa Ana, or there is a Don Tapatío, someplace in Santa Ana. Some people might know who that is. There's teachers from my school there, and there's even a few shout outs to a few former students in there too. So there's Easter eggs all over the place. I had a student one time who he actually went to Google Earth, and he went to La Calle de la Revolución in TJ, and he was actually following along when he was reading the book, and he was looking at all the descriptions of the street. And so there's Easter eggs all over the place.
The scenes of Tijuana, first, I haven't gone to Tijuana in like over 2 years. So just reading it really brought back a bunch of memories in Calle Revolución and the Arco. I mean, it was a treat all in itself reading that part. So it was really cool. Has anyone come up to you and been like, that's me, from what, or just do the people know that they're in the book?
Well, I mostly just use the names just as a way of giving people shout outs.
Okay.
You know, there's, and of course I always take creative liberties with characters. So, you know, but there are teachers in there that were kind of pleasantly surprised. They're like, wait, I'm in your book? And, sometimes. So it has happened. Mr. Garrett didn't know he was going to be in the book.
Wow. So Mr. Gary is an actual teacher.
Yes, and in fact, he was. I didn't even have Mr. Garrett as a teacher. The teachers when I used to be in Fremont, sometimes they were a little mean to us, and I remember walking down the halls, and I wasn't supposed to be there, and he actually kind of pointed me that, oh, you're not really supposed to be here, but he was so nice about it that it just always stayed with me. It was just that little kindness, and he just stayed with me. So when I was looking for a teacher, I'm like, oh yeah, Mr. Garrett, he needs to come back now.
That's cool. That is your own memory. And just the effect of someone just being nice. I mean, obviously you weren't supposed to be there, right? But instead of reacting in such, I think, a way that I think sometimes adults get overwhelmed, they're like, hey. So I think that was cool.
Yeah.
So is there someone you think about, or a specific target audience or person when writing certain characters? I know you read that, but for you mentioned that a little bit, but for like I can never say it. I always want to call him El Perrito Blanco, but I don't remember his real name.
David, there you go. So was he based off someone, or in that sense? Well, everybody starts from some place, and they're really they're kind of like Mr. Potato Heads, because you get the eyes in here, and this little part of this person. So they're kind of like little Frankenstein pieces. So I take a little bit of people and I combine them into new characters. But when I write the characters, Max and Mia, I kind of forget about the rest of the story, and I try to write it for young readers. So when you have a second grader who's reading the book, most second graders only ask about Max and Mia, and that's their focus. Yes, that's adorable, and they ask me questions about them. I have teachers who ask me questions about Mr. Garrett. I have a lot of Latinos that ask me about Lalo on the other side of the border. So there's a little bit for everybody. And so I do try and write to different age groups, of course, during the revision process, not when I'm actually writing it. And I just kind of, each plot line will kind of address a different audience. So there's something for everybody.
That's cool. I think the second grader was cool to know. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. I could just picture it.
I know, that's adorable. So what are some of the challenges that you faced in tackling, the topic of immigration is obviously really heavy, especially when, trying to talk about it with younger readers. What are some of those challenges you faced in the process?
I think the biggest challenge, and was my biggest fear, is that I didn't want to have my book have any triggers for children. And I kind of felt that it wouldn't be a trigger as long as I kind of helped them navigate through it. And so as a teacher, I took that responsibility really seriously. And so I wanted to make sure that if anybody is going through something similar, that at the end of the book, they will feel a little bit empowered.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the biggest thing. And of course, without giving away the ending, I wanted to make sure that the book was optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to leave people, feeling devastated or anything like that too. So that was actually the toughest part. How do you tie up all the loose ends and make it authentic? I had to make the book authentic as well. It was going to be a disservice if I didn't do that. And I'm trying to be real careful not to give away too much.
On page blah blah blah, all this scene. It's hard. It's because it's such a invigorating story, and Efrén goes through so much. I think some of the problems we see as adult problems, but Efrén's going through them, right? His feelings, his relationship, and what happened with mom, and even just seeing his dad. I think even as an adult, there were moments where I saw my own parents being reflected, or my grandfather's story. So I did feel like you brought something that was very traumatic, and then you eased it. So you did a really good job of that, even as someone who has seen that happen to even their own family members. So, but yeah, it was very inspirational just seeing Efrén be such an empowered young person, navigating through a lot of things. So what was the editing process like? Were there any challenges for Efrén that you ultimately left out of the novel? And is there anything that was left out that you wish would have been included?
The editing process was interesting. Honestly, I teach, and so I'm a teacher and I'm a father, and having time to do all the edits on top of teaching was very difficult. And at first it wasn't so bad because they gave you a little bit more time and the windows were pretty large. But as the time for publication came closer and closer, the windows kept shrinking. And my final edits, I remember, I think I didn't sleep for 3 nights. I stayed up. My kids, and I was thinking, these are the final edits. I can't do this. My editor gave me my notes, and then said, these are the final notes. This is the final one. This is it. Can you get to me by over the weekend? And I'm like, sure, I got this. I opened it up, and it was like every other page, and it was like 4 red marks.
Oh God.
But I knew that my kids were watching, and they were being so sweet. They were bringing me food, and they were bringing me drinks, and I was just working out of the living room, and I just figured, okay, if I fail, I fail, but I'm not gonna give up. And so my kids are watching, and I think the best lesson I can give them is to persevere. So I stuck there, and I didn't get up. I wasn't sleeping, and they would get up in the middle of the night, and I'd still be there. And I'm like, this is the lesson I want them to see. So when they go to college and they're having finals, they're going to remember, my dad used to do this too. I can do this as well. So that was that. And then what was the second part that you asked me about?
Were there any, I know I asked 3 all in one. Let me just throw all these questions at you. Were there any challenges for Efrén that you ultimately left out of the novel?
Yes, I wish that there was a final scene, and this is tricky to say without giving away the ending, but there was a scene I wish I could have added there. I figure it's up to society to determine what happens to kids like Efrén, and so I kind of have to wait it out and see how society is the one that has to finish Efrén's story, unfortunately, and I hope that society does. Give him the ending that we all want for Efrén.
Go ahead, Celia.
Do you think that, are there, or have you ever considered maybe doing a sequel to it to write the ending that you wanted, or, once society kind of hopefully catches up?
Or a short story or something.
Yeah, or a short story or a companion or.
That's the number one question that I've been getting. And children have been amazing because they keep telling me, you need to write it in Max's point of view or Mia's point of view.
That would be the best.
You need to tell it through a mom's point of view. And I'm letting a little bit of time pass because I do need to see the way that, we have a new president, new policies are in place. And so I'm watching very carefully to see how things are playing out. And I think it's up to me to just kind of bring attention to those things And if they're good, I'm hoping that they're going to be good things that I can highlight. Right now, it's a little too early to tell still. But yeah, eventually I would like to. I'm terrified of it. 'Cause I don't want to, ruin the story. But maybe someday I'm hopeful that I will be able to.
That's cool. And has anyone come up to you and been like, shared their own ending of what happens to Efrén at the end, or have you ever made that an assignment of like, what do you? Because I know that is really cool that you place the responsibility on society and on the readers, right? Because it does make us, at the end, I was like, I mean, I'm glad you brought this up, because me and Celia had a conversation, and I was like, man, the ending, like, it really, like, I want to know more about Efrén and what happens, right? And so hearing you say that is true, right? Because reading is such a magical thing. It teaches us a lot of things, right? And this one does make me reflect on how I can make a better path and support and empower individuals with experiences like Efrén and his family, and Max and Mia, right? But yeah, has anyone shared their ending?
Yes, actually, I've actually received lots of letters from kids, and they're amazing. Yes, and I have a couple of lesson plans on my website, and some of them, for example, are like, how would you rewrite the book in a different point of view? And so some of the teachers have done the lessons, and I get to see them. And then sometimes the children are actually putting their stories out there, and so they're telling me things, and it's kind of it makes me really sad to hear, but it makes me feel wonderful to hear that the book is having an impact on them, because sometimes when I visit classrooms virtually, they'll tell me, oh, my mom was deported too, and so all I can do is again highlight the positive parts to help guide them a little bit, and so okay, well, just keep in mind how Efrén becomes empowered, and you too can become empowered as well, and these are the things that you can do to help out.
That's cool. And then for folks interested, Ernesto's website is on the screen too. If for teachers and others interested in that, that's really cool. I think, I mean, I can just imagine reading like the children's like endings.
I know.
Man, that's really.
I want to ask like what your favorite one has been, but I don't want to spoil the end for anybody. So
it's so hard.
I know. I want to know, but I'll have to ask you another time.
Have any of them surprised you, where you were like, man, that would have been, has anything been like, taking your breath away?
The ones that honestly, the ideas are, I mean, I don't want to.
I know.
I know.
Yeah. But
we're stressing him out.
Sorry.
I don't want to steal ideas from somebody else either. But
yeah.
No, they've given me some wonderful ones, and honestly, the best ideas where people were like, one exercise was they're writing through Max and Mia's point of view. Mm-hmm. And when I was reading them, it was like I was reading. I always say that children are the ones who should be writing children's books, not adults, because they're the experts. And there's an innocence and a power and an honesty that we cannot duplicate. And so there have been letters where I'm reading this, and I'm like, oh my God, if I just copied this and sent it to my editor, this would be a picture book right now, and it would probably get published. They were so good.
That's sweet.
So yeah, there's lots of those, but the ones where the kids just open up and they tell you about their experiences and, oh yes, this is happening to me, those are the ones that have really gotten to me.
And do you write people back, like the students back?
I try to always. Sometimes not as quickly as I'd like to, but yeah, always do that.
But that's great. I'm sure even just the response, having a response at all would be great for any child. I know if I had written to you as a kid after reading your book and I got a letter from you, I'd be like, oh my goodness. I mean, even just in this chat, we're in this chat. We've been freaking out all week. So,
well, as a teacher, I used to we used to write letters to authors all the time. Mm-hmm. And I remember Lois Lowry, and one of my students wrote to her, and I said, you know what? She's a big, famous author. I'm not sure she's going to write back to you. Do you want to write somebody else? No. This is my favorite author. And not only did she write back, but she sent back like 3 books for the kid. Oh my God. And I was floored that somebody of her prestige would take the time to do that. So it's a mental note I have in my back where it's like, no, you got to write back.
Yeah, and it also, I think we talked about this before, me and Sandra, about the connection to authors at such a young age. Like it only became a thing as an adult, right? And then I felt so empowered being able to talk to like you, Ernesto, and other amazing authors. that the possibility of becoming an author is a thing, right? I think when we grew up, it was such a like, I'm never going to be an author. Like, you know, like my mom and dad would be like, no, get a real job, right? And so I think it's important for you to say these things and connect, and for authors to connect to young children, because it is empowering and it is motivating. And, you know, we see you all as superstars. And that does lead me to another question about, did your students know you were an author? Like well, I know you had them read your book, right? But like the newer students and stuff, like if you get a new batch of students, do they know you're an author? Are they like, you're like, I mean, I consider you a famous author, but
yeah, like an award. Do they know that?
Yeah,
like a big deal.
Yeah.
Yes and no. Like they come in and no, they're not. They're kind of like my kids, where they're not really impressed by anything, you know. And that's really nice to actually have that. I like that. You know, I like that feeling, because when I get into the classroom, nobody treats me like an author. I'm a teacher, and so it's kind of nice, because that's what I'm there for.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, there'll be that one kid that's like looking at me, going back to the screen. I'm like, what's going on over there? And they're like, you're famous. Look, you're or they'll see me how many hits, and like, you're more famous than the soccer player Cisneros, and that's kind of funny sometimes. It's strange. It's very surreal to see that, but you know, so once in a while, some of the kids are kind of funny that way.
They humble you, and then they uplift you all at once, once in one sentence.
Yeah, I like that candy, the sweet and sour candy.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's a
Sour Patch
perfect
Kids.
example. Oh my God. First they're
Sometimes
sweet.
they're sweet, and sometimes they're sour.
Oh.
So about you being, you know,
I know.
a big deal, especially to, like, you know, us. Me and Patty are, you know, active Reforma members, so we follow the Pura Belpre Awards like all year long. We're reading things and like, oh, do you think this will win? And talking to each other about it. So when you won, you know, we were excited, and, you know, how did that feel to get that phone call? And, you know, first of all, was it something that you knew was out there and were hoping for, or was it a big shock? Like, how did it feel to get that call?
I was under the impression that those awards are done over a phone call.
Mhm.
And so mine was actually done through a Zoom. And my editor just contacted me and said, and I had just let her know that I wasn't going to be able to finish my next book on time. And then she says, oh, Ernesto, can we Zoom, please? And I was like, oh, no.
Oh. You got called into the principal's office, though.
Yes, exactly. So that's the feeling I had. And then I go on the Zoom conference, and I see these people on there, and I'm like, wait a minute, are these all from HarperCollins? They're having an intervention for me? That must really be in trouble. And then they introduce themselves, and I wasn't expecting that, and I never allowed myself to dream something like that. Because, you know, if you don't dream, it doesn't hurt when you don't get these things. And my own kids even my students too. I always tell them to dream big, but for some reason I've never done that for myself. So I'm learning to do that a little bit more so now. But yeah, no, it was a complete and utter shock. The first thing I wanted to do was call my mom, but I couldn't because we're not allowed to say anything. And it was.
Oh yeah.
And I knew that if I told my mom, like everybody in Burandiro in Mexico was gonna know, all Michoacan was gonna know. So I couldn't say anything. So that was the toughest part. I had to figure out how to get my niece, and I didn't tell her why, but I just said, can you make sure that my mom watches the award, please? Just make sure she's right there watching this award. And she did. So it worked out really, really nice.
What was your mom's reaction? Like, did she call you after, or the YMAs, right? I guess.
Yeah, she did, and I spoke to my mom, and she told me that she couldn't pass the phone to my dad because my dad couldn't speak. He was too emotional to speak to me.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Did they watch the celebración too?
Yes. But that award. The thing about it was that it was nice to win it as an author, but honestly, I never thought that the world would want to read about an immigrant family, and it's pretty much my parents' kind of story. So to win that award was the validation of their story and who they were. So that's really why it was so emotional for me. because it meant more like yes, the world, the United States is accepting of my parents.
Yeah.
So
and their story and experience. And it just validated it, right? I think it was that's beautiful. You're gonna make me cry now.
I know.
Just thinking of you like talking to your, because it's true. Like sometimes you can't tell your parents or your mom, and you're just like, because I know they're gonna tell. I've been in that,
Yeah. But it was beautiful, and I thought for everybody watching, the celebración is the event that we have to celebrate the winners, and all of the winners and honor books get to do a speech. So Ernesto this year's speech was beautiful, and probably it was virtual, but probably brought everybody to tears all around the country and probably the world, everyone watching. I know mentioned this before to you, it was just ugly crying the whole time. But it was a beautiful, tribute to your father and your family, and it was just wonderful.
Yeah, I got like 5 text messages about, are you seeing Ernesto's presentation? And so it was amazing, Ernesto. I think the celebración video and stuff. So just know you touched a lot of people through your video and your work through that. So
yeah, and the story, what you said about people don't want to read about immigrant families, or they don't want those stories, or feeling that way. It's definitely a feeling I think a lot of us watching, or a lot of us that have read your book and really connected with it feel. And so it's so beautiful to see those stories awarded and recognized. So thank you.
I call it a sense of disentitlement. And it's the opposite of the entitlement that a lot of people seem to feel. And I always felt that I wasn't, the things that everybody else had just weren't for people like me. And that's really sad. And that's one of the messages I want to relate to everybody, that no, we're worthy of these things too. And we belong on pages too.
You wrote the book you didn't see when you were growing up. So I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah.
And speaking on the narration and the text of the book, our next question is for the scenes between Lalo and Efrén. The scenes between Lalo and Efrén were a huge part of Efrén's character development. So without giving a lot of it away, so he was at first weary of Lalo, but then learned to trust him. Lalo essentially saved him while in Mexico and shared a perspective of Tijuana that was very reflective. So Efrén says, and I quote, "I don't get what makes Tijuana so bad. This is limbo, man. A place not quite Mexico, not quite the U.S. La tierra de los olvidados, the land of the forgotten. You don't get a name like that for nothing." So why was this the description of Tijuana you chose to go with?
Well, I think I was very careful with how I represented Tijuana, because it's a beautiful city. I love the place, and I used to go there a lot when I was a kid. And yes, it does have some negative aspects of it too. But when we have so little representation of things, if you focus on the negative things, people are going to assume that that's all there is. Yeah. And there's not. There's a lot of beauty there and wonderful people there, and I love the environment there. But I have a lot of students who have family members who've been taken away, and because the parents they're still holding on to that American dream, that their kids are going to go to college here and they're going to be able to make something of themselves, they decide to leave. They'd rather be separated and give that opportunity to their children. And so there's many parents who are living right now across the border, and it's just so sad that the kids can only drive every once in a while to go see their parents. And so in the meantime, the parents are living in a place where they didn't grow up, the place that they don't know. And nobody talks about them. They're there and they're forgotten. So I wanted to make sure that I highlight that a little bit.
And I know I mentioned this before, but the Tijuana scenes really impacted me because I have heard that. I've never heard it outside my own family of how Tijuana is this place of just limbo, right? I think it has a lot of diversity from folks trying to cross over, just, they're waiting, right? And not only Mexicanos, but you got a lot of different people from different cultures and different countries. So you mentioning that was such a eye-opening and just put into perspective in writing something that I think a lot of us see when we go down, those of us who are able to, visit Tijuana. And I think, to be honest, this is the first time I've ever read of Tijuana in a book. Like I read of other parts of Mexico, but Tijuana is never mentioned. And so your book was the first one I've ever read that mentions Tijuana. and its people. So I found it very cool.
And when I went there, I mean, I wanted to make sure I mentioned Friendship Park as well.
Yes.
And one of the memories or images I have in my mind is of this little girl who was wearing a SeaWorld hat, and she's there and she's crying, and I'm in my mind I'm filling in the gaps. I can just picture, you know, the Dios and the Diaz taking the little girl over to SeaWorld and then saying, guess what? Afterwards, you get to go see your mom. Okay, now I'm gonna get emotional.
Yeah, you're seeing, I think, those stories, right? I think that's what's so heartbreaking of Tijuana is that you try to empathize with the children and their feelings, and it's something you would never I wouldn't know what it felt like, you know, and so
yeah, and I remember going over there and I remember even when I was little, I remember the kids walking up to the car and washing it, trying to sell gums, you know, to make a living. And I was just thinking, like, why me? What's different between me and these kids? Why do I get to live in the U.S. and why do I get all these privileges and these poor kids over here struggling just because they were born on this side of the wall? That never made any sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's you know, when Efrén is in Tijuana, and he's also reflecting on that, how that just, it's bizarre that something that seems so small, you know, is this huge difference. So it was interesting to see how that impacted him and how he took that with him, you know, after the fact. So there was another part of the book that really stood out to both of us. So the quote from the book is, standing up for his family in his neighborhood was one thing, and standing up against an entire country who wanted him gone was another. So here is where Efrén starts to understand the challenges that his father is facing and the realities are setting in for Efrén about the situation his parents and his family ultimately are in. Do you think that this was the turning moment for Efrén? And what about this moment is so important for readers to understand about his parents' vulnerabilities?
I think what I was thinking during this part was that, you know, when you're a little kid, you think your dad and your mom can do anything. And you see them kind of like being superheroes, and they're larger than life, and there's really nothing they can't tackle. And then there's always that one point in your life when you realize that that's not really the case. And so you see them and you actually become a little bit afraid, because now you know that there are things out there that your parents can't handle on their own. And I think even worse than that is the point when you realize that it's up to you to help your parents. And I think we all face that at a certain point. And so when Efrén is pretty much forced to take on all the responsibility of his mom, as she did.
Yeah.
That's when he realized, oh my gosh, this not only is this the responsibility that the mom had, this is on top of all his schoolwork, on top of everything else that he's doing. And obviously it's just a little bit too much. And part of the message I wanted to relay to people was that, especially to kids out there who are experiencing things like Efrén, is that you're not alone, and there is a community of people who can help you. So you have teachers, you have counselors, you know, there's so many different organizations out there that are willing to help you. And you don't have to put everything on your shoulders and carry the burden yourself.
That was something that me and Celia talked about, was how once his mom, you know, was taken by ICE, that he did take that responsibility. And you see that shift between him and having to take care of Maximia, and just like those dynamics. And then his dynamic was, so the dynamics between all family members was shifted, which I think happens a lot to us when the trauma happens. And so you dealt with that in such a empowering way for Efrén, right? But also showing how frustrated it was, right? And I think there was a bottom point of his emotions where he was just, you know, and having to look into that and face it and then go to his teachers was something that I think, right? And so he had a couple moments of that, and I think that, and that was important for us to see, not only as adults but as children, right? That it's okay for you to have like a moment of just complete, just letting it all go, right? So it was cool to see that for Efrén's character. So on that note, you introduced us to Superman and Superwoman, not mistaken for Superman and Superwoman. So, and even Superboy in the novel. So have you considered making a that's a lot of Super Familia graphic novel asked me to say Soper. One more time, y'all.
You know what? I've always wanted to make a graphic novel because I was such a reluctant reader myself, and I think that would be amazing. And I've as of late, I've come across like different graphic novels. Like I've seen some of Chapulín Colorado, and I'm just like, these are amazing. I would love to be able to do something like this, but I just don't know how to do graphic novels, to be honest. But it doesn't mean that I won't, because every time that I've done a book, I've always told my agent, I don't really know what I'm doing, and she just keeps telling me, well, did you know what you were doing in the previous book? I'm like, no. Like, well, then keep going. So
persevere.
Persevere. And yeah, so I would love to tackle a graphic novel. Yeah, and I actually wanted to initially I wanted the book to be called Soaped Boy, but I thought that people weren't going to understand what. So yeah, I was picturing like a little boy with a cape, but I didn't think people would understand what the book was going to be about, or they would think it was going to be about a superhero, and it wasn't. But yeah, maybe that's a possibility.
Well, and that was we didn't include this question when we sent it to you because I wasn't sure, how much you thought about Superman and Woman and Superboy. But I was wondering how you would envision their uniforms being, like their capes or what colors they would wear. I'm super all for this Super Familia.
Yeah, they were characters all in itself.
Yeah, I would read it.
I for some reason I'm picturing, those little PJs you wore with the onesies with the little feet.
Yes.
It would have to be some kind of variation like that.
Okay.
But, and I think the cape would be a towel.
What color towel though? Because I thought it would be a towel too, but I felt like it would be red for some weird reason. I don't know why.
I thought yellow. I envisioned a yellow cape.
I envisioned like yellow shoes. Isn't that weird? Man, we could. But anyway, this is your question, Ernesto.
Well, my mom worked in a factory, and she used to make dresses that were made of a knitted material. And now that I'm thinking about it, and my dad, obviously, in the Pura Belpre Award, he saw me wear his uniform. So I think the dad's uniform would be just like the uniform. I think I would have to do it that way. It would be like a gardener's outfit. Mm-hmm. And I think my mom, I'm not sure exactly how I would do that, but she would definitely be wearing chanclas, though. I think things for sure.
Of course.
I mean, but do you? I don't know if you've given the graphic novel thing idea a lot of thought. But is there an artist in mind since that you would love to work with? We're going to throw it out into the universe. Maybe it will happen. But is there someone a graphic artist who you're like, that is goals or their goals?
I since they were little, I've been trying to get my children to work with me on a book. Yeah. And at different stages we tried, but then with schoolwork, it just didn't work out. I would like to write a book like that with my kids. And if that didn't happen, of course, Ben, I would love to work with her because she's just a genius, and everything she does is just amazing. But definitely, I think my first wish would be to write it with my kids, because that would be a way of spending time together. Now that they're teenagers, they don't want to spend so much time with me anymore. So I would if we get a contract, they would have to spend time with me.
That's the only way to get them teenagers to.
It's okay. Once they're not teenagers anymore, when they're adults, they want to hang out with you.
We're not so bad. We'll call you 20 times and be like, you're not answering your phone. What are you doing? Yes.
So we do have some audience questions have come up. So we're going to ask some of those before we run out of time. So the first one we have is from Maria Navoa. Would you ever consider writing a book based on one of your own students' lives? Changing the names, of course, but is that something you might do?
I'm always kind of paying attention to what's going on around me. And I might have I would include maybe, if I see something going on in somebody's life, and somebody and I see it happening, I might maybe include it as a part of a story. But to take the whole story, I always feel like it's not my story to tell. And so I think my job as a teacher is that I would wish that instead they would feel empowered enough to write it themselves. So I would rather see that, because there have been stories. Oh my goodness. Last year, even during the pandemic, the short stories that some of my students were giving me, my self-esteem was dropping, because I was looking at work and I'm like, oh my God, this is way better than anything I could do.
That's inspiring, though.
Yeah.
You're teaching our youth, and they're going to be our writers, so we're going to be reading them. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah,
you're teaching our future award winners, our future Pura Belpre winners, right?
Yes. And initially, that's what I thought my influence was going to be. I didn't think my books would ever get published, so I thought they were going to get published, and then my fame, my 15 or seconds of fame, were and the acknowledgments. But yeah, things worked out differently.
That's cool. All right, so we have another question by Joanna Fabicon. And she asks, what's the best snack /food/drink to keep you going during those all-night writing or editing sessions? Oh man, that's a good question.
Yeah.
My go-to is that I get corn chips, the ones from Costco, that big humongous bag that lasts like a month.
A month? Mine's like a week.
And I do I use bean dip, sour cream with some lemon and salt, and then I use nacho cheese. So I used like a 3 different.
So you don't mix it all together. You
No.
have separate.
Well, when I dip, eventually
you double dip.
It's only my plate.
I don't know, Ernesto. I'm just kidding. That's cool. Wait, do you make the bean dip yourself, or is it like canned?
No.
That's the breaking question.
I love the canned one. The jalapeno flavor one is my favorite. So I love that stuff. When I was a kid, and I was a latchkey kid, and I come home and there was food waiting for me, but I was scared to go inside the house because it was I was going to be there for a long time, and my sisters used to tell me scary stories, so I didn't want to go inside the house. And so sometimes I would get like the cans of bean dip and make sandwiches out of them, and just put some cheese on there with some jalapenos, and they were really good. So
I love bean sandwiches.
Yeah, that's like oh my god. I grew up with eating bean sandwiches, pero con mayonesa. Like when I tell people that, they're like, that's a really weird and gross thing, and I'm like, I grew up with beans and mayonesa. Like, I don't know. Am I the only one who grew up with that? So
no, if you go to many places with ask for torta, you're gonna get ham and beans and mayonesa. So that's.
So I'm not a weird kid. See?
No, it's totally normal.
All right.
But I like that we all have different variations of our bean sandwiches.
I mean, that's what makes it so incredible. That's we can write a whole book about beans and the recipes.
Yes, a cookbook will be next, right? We have another question from Tina Lerno. Do you plan on continuing teaching and writing? And do you think you would stop teaching to focus on your writing?
That's I have been asked that before, and it's funny because during the summer when I had a little bit more time to write, right before I went back to work, I wrote 1 page, and that's all that I could write. So at that time, and then now that I've gone back to work, I have a whole chapter, and I just started, and it's really weird because I don't have time to write. And so what I've noticed is that the students, they do feed me as far as just interacting with the kids and listening to them speak. And sometimes I just kind of like take a step back and I just listen to them. And I'm like, wow, I have a room full of characters. And so when I go back in there, it really helps me to get in the mindset of writing for that age. So I don't know if I can write without teaching, and I don't know if I can teach without writing. So they just kind of feed each other.
So for now, you're going to be both. You're going to be wearing both hats.
Yeah.
I give you all the props. I can barely get my life together just being one thing.
The less time you have, the more productive you are.
That's what I was going to say. I feel like, because I think the procrastinator in me likes to push everything to the end, because then I get everything done and then I can just check everything off. So it's like I don't know, time crunch. So we have a question by Glenn Rudge, and they want to know, is your book available in large print?
Oh. You know what? There was talk about that. I'm not sure, but I'm definitely gonna ask. I will ask, and if it isn't, that's definitely something I want to suggest. No, that's a really good question.
That's cool.
I'm working. I would love to see large print, Braille, and Spanish. I'm still waiting to see if we can get the Spanish one out
That was my next question. Yeah, I work in collection development for Spanish, and I was like, when's the Spanish one gonna come? That's my number.
I pictured the kids and the parents being able to read the book, one in English and one in Spanish, and being able to have a conversation at the dinner table about the book. And that's like one of my dreams. So when I talk about like wishing big, that's one of my big wishes that I have.
That's cool, like a family book club. Which I think a lot of people did with Sandra Cisneros' house on Mango Street. That was cool. All right, we have time for one more. I think one more. No, we have a few. Sorry, I looked at the clock. The next one is from Eddie Vera, and he says, "Hello, Ernesto. I'm sure your parents, like many first-generation or immigrant parents, have told you to get an education. But how has having an education changed your life?"
Well, the funny thing about that is my mom would always say, "Well, you're going to go to college." And then when I asked her, "Well, what's college?" She's like, "I don't know, but you're going to." And when we all my siblings were all college graduates, and my mom has a wall because after we receive our degrees, she takes them from us, and she says, "Well, I worked really hard for these," and we're not going to argue with her. So she has all her college degrees. So she's got many college degrees.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and and it is because of all the sacrifice she made, her and my dad. So it's only fair she keeps the degrees.
Do you have a copy of it though, like a photograph? I don't know, just in case.
No, I need to.
Scan it. Have her scan it.
Yeah, scan it.
Yes, I need to do that. Yes, yeah.
We're just giving him things to do now, Celia.
I know. We'll send you a to-do list.
Thank you. No, it'd be nice to have a copy of my degrees in my classroom. That's always nice for the students to see. You know what? It's yes, having a college degree has changed my life because I love teaching, but if I didn't, it gives me options. And I remember my parents coming home, and sometimes my mom would be crying, and I'm like, "What's wrong, Mom?" "Oh, my boss yelled at me, and I didn't do anything wrong." But they weren't in a place where they can stand up to their bosses. They weren't in a place where they can look for a different job. No matter how they were treated or mistreated, in many cases, they had to just put up with and just deal with whatever was going on. And a college degree, I'm always telling my students, it's power. And it means that you don't have to be treated that way. And if you're in a workplace that it's not a good environment for you, that college degree is your path to go elsewhere, and not to have to put up with things like that.
That was beautiful. Yeah. So everyone go to school. Go to school.
Yes.
Listen to Ernesto.
And come to the library to do your homework.
Yes, and you know what? The funny thing is when my friends turned 18, I remember sitting outside the auto shop, the parking lot, and we were all discussing what we were going to be doing. And some of my friends were like, "Well, I have an uncle that does construction. I'm going to go over there. Oh, my brother-in-law has a auto shop. I'm going to learn how to fix cars." And I was just thinking to myself, I'm 18. I still want to be a kid. I'm going to go to college so I can stay a kid. And you guys go ahead and become adults. I don't want any part of that right now. So that's another thing about going to college. You actually extend your childhood.
That is very true. Student for life.
Yes.
Yeah, and college is amazing. So make sure you go. Time of your life.
Cool.
So our next question is from Poon. If you were teaching your book to a group of students who may not come from a community that reflects Efrén's experiences, what would you teach alongside it to help them build that background?
Oh, that is a great question. Well, personally, for me, I kind of cheat because we can just go around and field trip around the neighborhood. The book takes place outside where I work. But otherwise, you know what I would do is I would definitely do a lot of like Google Earth searches and go on virtual field trips. I might even there's a couple of films like on the other side of the moon, on the other side of the moon, El otro lado de la luna, where I kind of give them a little bit of visuals. I would probably have bring in food, bring in some of the music, just so they can taste some sopes and see what they're like. I would bring other literature that actually deals with the same type of stories. There's a documentary actually about the Friendship Park that they can actually see some of the images and actually get to witness what's going on there. There's an organization in Tijuana that actually publishes books from from moms who've been separated from their families, and they're actually creating picture books that they can actually give to their kids. Oh my gosh, there's so many things out there that I think I would love to bring just so that the kids become aware of them, and also to educate them a little bit about the history. Like the whole Repatriation Act that happened here in California, and just to kind of educate them a little bit more so they have a little bit more compassion towards immigrant families.
Yeah, I think those resources, and we are at a library, so what better place than to look for all these, items, and so that was great. All right, so we want to thank you for answering all our questions. And now, before I know it's 5, so you stay with us for like 2 more minutes because it's going to be fast. So now we're going to play this or that, or what we like to call rapid fire questions. So this is just for fun and allows us to learn a little bit more about you. So we'll ask you something really quickly, and you tell us which one you prefer. Ready, Celia?
I'm ready. Okay. Pulparindo or mazapan?
Oh, pulparindo, those are my favorite. And I love them because they're not sticky. So if you have like regular pulpa, it gets all over your fingers.
Yeah.
No. It has a little flour on there, and you can just get it, no mess whatsoever. Oh, the only problem is that I will eat like 10 of them.
Oh my God! Well, because you just eat them like So I'm assuming you break the mazapan. You don't keep it. You're a breaker of. Oh man! All right, el mercadito o el super?
El super.
Takis are hot too.
Go ahead.
Takis for sure. And I'm not supposed to be eating anything. I'm allergic to gluten. So I've learned that with takis, it's okay because I can just lick the takis, put it down, lick the takis and put it down. So I've learned how to adapt to that.
Oh my God, I do that. Yes, it's
That's
the best
a good solution. Yeah.
You get the flavor without having now you're spilling all your secrets, Ernesto. All right, sopes or pizza?
Sopes, although someday I do want to have a sope pizza.
I think of like an empanada when I think of like without the sweet. Anyway, sorry.
That sounds amazing. Arroz con leche or flan?
Oh, both are delicious. But arroz con leche, my mom used to make it on Sunday mornings. She would send me over to Don Antonio's bakery. And I would go over there on Sunday mornings when the bolillos were fresh. I would come home and it was already served for me. So forever arroz con leche. To this day, my mom would call me and just tell me, "Mijo, te hice arroz con leche. Vente para acá." And she knows the guarantee way to get me to go visit her.
I mean, who isn't? I would go. Oh
Yeah.
man. No. All right, salsa verde o salsa roja?
Salsa verde.
El chapulín colorado o el chavo?
El chapulín. Oh, you know what? Oh my goodness, that is tough. They both. Oh, actually, I grew up with both of them. So, El Chapulín Colorado he makes me laugh. El Chavo makes me feel.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It's true. Okay, tortillas de harina o de maíz?
Oh my goodness. Maíz, unless they're freshly made. If they're freshly made, that harina.
Okay.
That's how I do.
Tacos or frijolitos con queso?
Frijolitos con queso and jalapenos and cheese.
Yes.
Sí.
Tapatío o Cholula?
I'm going to cheat on this one, and I'm going to say salsa buffalo.
It's a great bottle.
I know. It's on my grocery list now.
I know.
Mexican hot sauce.
Everyone go buy them. That's cool.
Pancakes or waffles?
Pancakes, only because that's what my mom used to make, and my grandfather used to make them when we visited in Mexico too.
All right, UCI or CSULB? It's just Cal State.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot with that one.
I know.
I'm going to be watching and listening.
Some of us are CSULB alumni, so
I know.
I don't know if that'll sway your answer.
Watch your answer.
I'm going to say that both were amazing, and I'm glad that I attended both. However, if I had to go back for another degree, if I did, I think I'd like to go to Cal State Long Beach because of just there was a nice ambiance on campus that I really, really liked. But I love UCI too.
Would you rather be able to eat anything you wanted or be able to predict the future?
I think because I have I'm allergic to gluten. I think I want to be able to eat everything that I can't eat anymore. It's been like 2 years that I really can't eat. There's a lot of things I've been wanting to eat. So, yes.
It breaks my heart. Oh my God.
I know. I want you to have Takis.
I know, not just lick the Takis. Oh man. Okay. Would you rather walk on the moon or be able to walk barefoot anywhere?
Oh, walk on the moon. That would be amazing. Just the view, just to experience that view of the Earth. Oh, that would be amazing.
Yes.
Would you rather?
Anywhere, because I always burn myself. Right, I'm always stepping on something.
Right?
Would you rather spend every day eating the same thing or spend every day listening to the same song?
I already spend the whole day listening to the same song. I kind of rotate through them, but I'm the kind of person that would just play one song
Oh,
over
man.
and over and over and over and over again. So I think that the music.
Cool.
I'm
Oh, my God.
more about the music than the words. So
Oh, that's a cool take. Well, thank you so much, Ernesto. That concludes our rapid fire questions or this or that.
We had the best time with you, and we still have like a million more questions and recipes we want to trade, more bean sandwiches and taquitos, frijolitos. But thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for your work. You know, we really loved it, and you know, I know it means a lot to have these stories told. So thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I just want to say that a lot of I know that the Efrén Divided it's a very serious book, and I tried to make it as funny as I could. And just for people out there, my next one comes out in March, and I wanted to purposely make it a little bit more lighthearted, and I try to make it as funny as possible. So this is this is Isaac, and this is Marco, and they're best friends who live are neighbors. And Marco has this misconception that if he's the smallest boy at school and he thinks that he can reconnect with his dad, who was a high school jock, if he makes the basketball team. So he's going to go ahead and do something that is totally out of his realm. And this is Isaac, who his parents are in the middle of a divorce, and sometimes they fight over his grades. And he feels that if he became more of a scholar, that his parents would not get a divorce. So they're pretty much going to try and switch lives and become like each other in an attempt to fix their lives. And it's told through both of their point of views. And
cool.
It's a little more lighthearted, so I'm hoping that if I made you cry before, I'm hoping that I'll make you laugh this time.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm excited to read it. I saw the cover reveal on social media, and I was like, "Ooh, this looks great." Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing with us. I'm looking forward to it. It comes out in March 2022.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll mark our calendars.
Yeah, I'm already counting down and waiting. So thank you so much again for being with us today. And thank you all for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this conversation with author Ernesto Cisneros. Remember to visit lapl.org to read more books by Ernesto. We hope that you will all mark your calendars to join us virtually on Saturday, September 25th for the Los Angeles Libros Festival. This free right here. You can see the schedule and all of the information by following this link in the chat or on screen. So this is a free bilingual book festival for the whole family and is a collaboration between the Los Angeles Public Library, La Librería, and Reforma, the National Association to Promote Library and Information Services to Latinos of the Spanish-speaking. To learn more about the festival, please visit the link on the screen and the link in the chat, lapl.org/librosfest. Thank you all so much for attending the virtual Your Author program, and we cannot wait to see you again at the festival in September. Gracias a todos, and enjoy your bean sandwiches for dinner.
Have a good weekend, everyone. Bye.
Adios.